The tension in the View's studio could be cut with a knife. The audience buzzed with anticipation as Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary under President Donald Trump, took her seat across from Whoopi Goldberg and the panel of co-hosts. Karoline, a sharp and composed political strategist, was no stranger to the media's fire. She had spent the last 2 years fending off some of the most aggressive reporters in Washington. But today, she was in the lion's den, ABC's The View, a daytime talk show notorious for its heated political debates. Whoopi, the longtime host and outspoken liberal, adjusted her glasses, tapping her notes against the desk. "So, Karoline," she started, her voice laced with skepticism, "what exactly is your job these days, cleaning up all of Trump's messes?" A few audience members chuckled, but Karoline was unfazed. She smiled, crossing her legs. "Actually, Whoopi, my job is to deliver the truth to the American people. Something your show has struggled with in recent years." The atmosphere immediately shifted. Co-host Sunny Hostin raised her eyebrows while Joy Behar smirked, waiting for Whoopi's inevitable counterpunch. Whoopi leaned forward. "The truth? Oh honey, that's rich, considering your boss just got fact-checked into oblivion last week." Karoline didn't hesitate. "You mean by the same media outlets that falsely claimed Trump colluded with Russia? The same ones that dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop story as disinformation before it turned out to be true?" The audience murmured. A few even clapped. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. "Let's cut through the nonsense, Karoline. Trump and his team, including you, have been feeding Americans propaganda for years. That's why people like us exist, to call you out." Karoline tilted her head. "People like you? You mean multimillionaire celebrities pretending to be the voice of the common person while pushing one-sided narratives? Whoopi, you're not a journalist. You're an entertainer. And lately, not a very good one." The studio gasped. Even Joy Behar's usual smirk had vanished. Whoopi opened her mouth to fire back, but before she could, Karoline continued, "The problem with The View isn't differing opinions, it's the complete intolerance of conservative voices. You don't debate, you shut down, insult, and cancel. That's not journalism. That's propaganda." The studio audience, known for leaning liberal, was now awkwardly split. Some booed, others clapped. Even the producers behind the cameras exchanged nervous glances. Whoopi took a deep breath. "You can believe whatever you want, Karoline. But here's the deal, we don't need Trump's mouthpieces lying to our audience. People are tired of the nonsense." Karoline leaned forward. "If that's the case, Whoopi, why do conservative guests always get cut off, shouted down, or mocked on this show? The truth is, your viewers deserve better than this scripted outrage." Joy Behar interrupted, "Oh please, don't act like conservatives are the victims. You guys are the ones banning books and attacking democracy." Karoline shook her head. "No, Joy. We're banning pornographic books from elementary schools. And democracy? You mean when your side weaponizes the legal system against political opponents?" Before anyone could react, Whoopi suddenly threw her hands up. "All right, enough. This interview is over. I don't have time for these conspiracy theories." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some cheered, others jeered. Karoline, unfazed, simply smiled and stood up. "Well, Whoopi, if you can't handle a real conversation, maybe The View isn't the right place for you." With that, Karoline turned and walked off, leaving the entire studio in stunned silence. Little did she know this moment would ignite a media firestorm and lead to a shocking twist that no one saw coming. The clip of Karoline Leavitt's fiery showdown with Whoopi Goldberg went viral before the broadcast had even ended. Within hours, hashtags like #Whoopi vs. Karoline and #ViewMeltdown dominated social media. Conservative commentators hailed Karoline's boldness, while liberal pundits accused her of spreading misinformation. By evening, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Fox News praised Karoline's takedown of mainstream media hypocrisy, while CNN labeled her behavior disrespectful and inflammatory. At the White House, President Trump was reportedly thrilled. "That's my girl," he declared, watching the segment replayed on a loop. They didn't know what hit him. Karoline, meanwhile, was calm as ever. Sitting in her West Wing office, she scrolled through her phone, watching both the backlash and praise roll in. It wasn't her first media storm, and it wouldn't be her last. Her phone buzzed. A call from the president himself. "Karoline, you just gave them a taste of their own medicine," Trump boomed. "The base loves it. We need more of that energy. Maybe you should go on there every week." Karoline chuckled. "I don't think Whoopi could survive another round." "Good," Trump said. "Let them sweat. And listen, don't back down. They'll try to spin this against us, but you keep telling the truth. That's why I hired you." As Karoline hung up, a notification popped up, an email from The View's executive producer. "Urgent. Request for a follow-up discussion." Karoline raised an eyebrow. Follow-up discussion? Clearly, the show's producers knew the confrontation was ratings gold. But she wasn't about to walk back her words. If anything, she was ready to double down. Meanwhile, over at ABC's headquarters, things were not so calm. Whoopi Goldberg was furious. "I'm done," she snapped, pacing in her dressing room. "I've had it with these political hacks coming on here and lecturing me." Joy Behar nodded in agreement. She was out of line, no question. But honestly, Whoopi, people are eating it up. The ratings are through the roof. Whoopi rolled her eyes. "I don't care about the ratings. If they bring her back, I walk." The tension spilled over into the next morning's production meeting. Producers were divided. Some wanted to invite Karoline back to capitalize on the media buzz, while others worried about losing Whoopi, the show's longest-running and most recognizable face. Then came the phone call that no one expected. A senior executive from ABC's corporate office. "Look," the executive said, his voice firm, "we can't afford to lose Whoopi. But the board is loving the publicity. We need a solution fast." By noon, a decision had been made. Whoopi Goldberg was summoned to an emergency meeting with top ABC brass. The message was clear: either you cool it or we find someone who will. And Whoopi. She didn't take ultimatums lightly. When the cameras rolled the next day, the tension was palpable. Whoopi's usual wit was gone, replaced by a cold, forced professionalism. She avoided mentioning Karoline Leavitt entirely, an obvious sign to keen observers that the battle wasn't over. Back at the White House, Karoline watched with interest. She had rattled the hornet's nest, and now the fallout was just beginning. But even she couldn't predict the explosive twist that was about to unfold. The tension between Whoopi Goldberg and ABC's executives wasn't going away, it was getting worse. Behind the scenes, Whoopi had drawn a line in the sand. If Karoline Leavitt was invited back, she would walk. But ABC was in a bind. The clash between Karoline and Whoopi had skyrocketed the views ratings to the highest they'd been in years. Advertisers were thrilled. The network wanted more, and they weren't about to let anyone, not even Whoopi, stand in the way of that. A week after the explosive interview, rumors began swirling that Karoline had been invited back for a no-holds-barred special episode. Internet chatter speculated that the show's producers wanted a full-on debate, no filters, no interruptions. It was a gamble, but the potential for record-breaking viewership was too tempting. When Whoopi caught wind of the plan, she didn't mince words. Storming into the executive office, she slammed the door behind her. "You bring her back, I'm out," she warned, her voice low and icy. "I've given this show 20 years. I'm not going to sit there while you let that woman spout Trump propaganda unchecked." The network's vice president sighed. "Whoopi, you're invaluable to us, but the reality is this moment is bigger than any of us. People are watching. And whether we like it or not, Karoline Leavitt delivers ratings." Whoopi shook her head. "So, you'd rather sell your soul for views?" "It's not about selling our soul," he countered. "It's about balance. Whether you agree with her or not, Karoline represents a voice that millions of Americans relate to. And we're a news platform, our job is to let the public hear both sides." But Whoopi wasn't having it. "I won't be part of the circus." 2 days later, ABC made their decision public. Breaking news: Karoline Leavitt to return to The View for a special debate, but without Whoopi Goldberg. The media went wild. Some framed it as Whoopi taking a principled stand against disinformation. Others called it a humiliating defeat for the talk show veteran. Conservative outlets celebrated, dubbing it a victory for free speech. At the White House, Karoline received the news with her usual calm. Sitting in her office, she scrolled through her phone as messages from supporters poured in. A call from Trump came within minutes. "Karoline, you've done it again," he said, a grin audible in his voice. "They're cracking. And now you've got Whoopi running scared. Beautiful work." Karoline laughed softly. "I just told the truth, Mr. President. The rest took care of itself." The truth, however, was that the backlash wasn't over. Whoopi wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, she took to her personal social media account, posting a fiery video message. "I'm stepping away from The View for now. I won't sit on a panel that gives a megaphone to dangerous lies and propaganda. ABC can chase ratings all they want, but I won't be a part of it." The post exploded online. Within hours, #IStandWithWhoopi was trending worldwide. Support poured in from Hollywood celebrities, politicians, and fans alike. Meanwhile, ABC's decision was paying off. Viewership for the upcoming special featuring Karoline Leavitt was projected to shatter records. But behind the scenes, executives were starting to worry. Had they pushed Whoopi too far? Would she walk away for good? And if she did, what would The View become without its most iconic voice? Karoline, meanwhile, was preparing for round 2. And this time she wasn't holding back. The day of the highly anticipated The View special arrived and the atmosphere was electric. Security around the studio was tighter than ever. Protesters had gathered outside, some waving "I stand with Whoopi" signs while others held "Karoline Leavitt speaks for America" banners. The nation was divided and everyone was watching. Inside the studio, Karoline Leavitt sat calmly in the green room reviewing her notes. She knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just about her, it was about representing millions of Americans who felt silenced by mainstream media. Producers rushed around nervously. The absence of Whoopi Goldberg had left a gaping hole in the show's dynamic. Co-hosts Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin were ready to confront Karoline, but there was no denying it. Without Whoopi's commanding presence, the panel felt off balance. As the countdown to the live broadcast ticked down, Karoline was unfazed. She knew what she was walking into and she was ready. The cameras rolled. "Welcome to a special edition of The View," Joy Behar began, her tone colder than usual. "As you all know, our longtime colleague Whoopi Goldberg has chosen to step away temporarily. Today, we continue the conversation with the person at the center of that controversy, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt." Karoline smiled politely as the audience erupted into a mix of applause and boos. She waited for the noise to settle before speaking. "Thank you for having me back," she said smoothly. "I know it's been a heated few weeks, but I'm here to have a real conversation if you're willing." Sunny Hostin wasted no time going on the offensive. "Karoline, let's cut to the chase. You came here last time and accused this show of shutting down conservative voices. But isn't it true that your administration actively suppresses the free press when the narrative doesn't fit your agenda?" Karoline met her gaze without flinching. "No, Sunny. What's true is that this administration fights against media bias. We welcome tough questions, but what we won't tolerate is the deliberate spreading of misinformation to serve a political agenda." Joy scoffed. "Misinformation? You mean like when the president claims the 2024 election was stolen without evidence?" Karoline's smile sharpened. "I mean like when mainstream outlets dismissed election irregularities without investigating. Americans have the right to question their government. Isn't that what journalism is supposed to support?" The audience stirred. Some clapped, others jeered. But Karoline didn't pause. "The real question," she continued, "is why shows like this only seem to welcome one side of the argument. You say you want open dialogue, but when someone like me comes along, you'd rather silence us than debate the facts." The tension thickened as Joy leaned forward. "You're here now, aren't you? No one's silencing you." Karoline chuckled. "I'm here because your ratings need me here." The studio gasped. Even the producers behind the scenes widened their eyes. Karoline had struck a nerve. For the next 30 minutes, the debate raged on. Karoline calmly dismantled each accusation with carefully crafted responses. And despite the pushback, she never lost her composure. But it was the final moments of the broadcast that changed everything. Joy, visibly frustrated, asked one last question. "So tell us, Karoline, do you think Whoopi Goldberg was wrong to walk away from this show?" Karoline took a breath. "I think Whoopi did what she believed was right, but walking away from tough conversations isn't courage. It's avoidance. If we can't have honest debates, how will this country ever heal?" The words hung heavy in the air. And just like that, the camera faded to black. But the real bombshell? It was about to drop behind the scenes. As the credits rolled on the explosive The View special, chaos erupted behind the scenes. Producers scrambled to manage the fallout while the co-hosts retreated to their dressing rooms, still simmering from Karoline Leavitt's unflinching performance. Karoline, however, was as cool and composed as ever. She tucked her notes into her bag, flashed a polite smile at the frazzled production assistant escorting her out, and headed toward the exit. She had said what she came to say, and by the look of things, she had won. But just as she reached the studio's side door, a familiar voice called out, "Karoline, wait." She turned to find none other than Whoopi Goldberg standing there, arms crossed, a curious expression on her face. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The tension between them was still fresh, but something had shifted. Whoopi's usual fire seemed tempered by something else, curiosity, maybe even respect. "I didn't think you'd still be here," Karoline said smoothly. "I had to see how far you'd go," Whoopi replied, her voice even. "And you know what? You didn't disappoint." Karoline raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" Whoopi chuckled dryly. "Don't get carried away, sweetheart. But I'll give you credit, you don't back down. I can respect that, even if I don't agree with a damn thing you said." Karoline tilted her head, sensing there was more. "So, what now? You going to drag me on Twitter like everyone else?" To her surprise, Whoopi shook her head. "Nah. I'm tired of the noise. You said something out there that stuck with me. You asked how this country's supposed to heal if we can't even talk to each other. Maybe you've got a point. The air between them grew quieter, heavier. It was the kind of moment that didn't make headlines, but it mattered. You want to talk? Karoline asked cautiously. Or is this your way of trying to ambush me? Whoopi let out a genuine laugh. Please. If I wanted to ambush you, I'd have done it on live TV. No, what I'm saying is, maybe we should sit down, off camera, and have a real conversation. No producers. No spin. Just you and me. Karoline blinked in surprise. This was not the outcome she had expected. After weeks of public sparring, the idea of sitting down privately with Whoopi Goldberg was almost unthinkable. But deep down, something about it felt right. I'm game, Karoline said, offering her hand. Let's talk. Whoopi hesitated for a beat before shaking her hand, her grip strong and steady. Don't think this means I'm going soft on you, she warned. I still think you're wrong on almost everything. But if you're willing to listen, I will too. For the first time, Karoline smiled genuinely. Deal. But fair warning, I don't play nice just because we're off the record. Whoopi grinned. Good. Neither do I. As they left the studio, the world outside still buzzed with the aftermath of their public battle. But behind closed doors, something far more unexpected had begun, a conversation that neither of them had planned but both knew was long overdue. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward bridging a divide no one thought could be crossed. But one thing was clear, in a media landscape full of noise and outrage, two of the most powerful women in America had just changed the game. And the world would be watching what happened next. As they left the studio, the world outside still buzzed with the aftermath of their public battle. But behind closed doors, something far more unexpected had begun, a conversation that neither of them had planned but both knew was long overdue. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward bridging a divide no one thought could be crossed. But one thing was clear, in a media landscape full of noise and outrage, two of the most powerful women in America had just changed the game. And the world would be watching what happened next.